Hi guys, Alice here from Nerdy Chic Bookworm. I have decided today to do a wrap-up video of all of the books that I have read from January 2020 up until now. I've realised that I haven't done any wrap-up videos since I've started this booktube channel, and even though I haven't read that many books in the past 4 months, I thought what I have read I've enjoyed, so I'd like to talk about them. I have got a few notes down here, so if you see me looking down, just ignore it. It's me just trying to make sense so that I can make sense to you. So the first book that I read back in January, it was a little zine, and this is Doom in Glitter by Lena Norms. This is a collection of 20 poems that Lena has wrote herself, all about her 20s and what it's like living in your 20s, the fears that you have, the things that you have to deal with in your 20s, the impending doom of turning 30. But then it's also got things about climate change and about heartache and grief and love and loss, and it's just a really nice collection of poems. I really enjoyed this. I don't really read poems very often, but I would like to get into poetry more, and I follow Lena on YouTube, and when I saw she was doing this, I thought, yes, this is what I'm going to try. And I have to say, it did get me into wanting to read more poetry. I mean, it's not very long at all. Like I said, it is just a zine. So there's, I'm sure there's 20, but it's got some really nice illustrations in there as well. And my favourite poem is called Spring Clean, which is this one here. And it's just a lovely, lovely poem, and it was by far my favourite out of all of them. This didn't take very long at all to read. It took maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, but it was just a really nice start to 2020 for me as well, and it got me into wanting to read more poetry as well, so for that, thank you, Lena. The second book that I read was The Kingdom by Jess Rothenberg. This is, I would say, a near future dystopian sort of book, written about this place called The Kingdom, which is sort of a futuristic take on Disneyland, and it's basically these people have built the kingdom to be like a Disneyland, and they've got princesses who are known as fantasists, who are basically cyborgs, who have basically been engineered to make all the guests' dreams and wishes come true no matter what. And they've made it so it's really, really, really fantastical. Like, they've brought back extinct animals and bioengineered them so that people who are visiting can see what, you know, dinosaurs and other extinct animals looked like. They're also sort of making hybrid animals, so mixing two animals together and sort of building environments for them, so it's almost like a zoo. You can ride on live dragons, like, wow. And it is a really, really good book. I really enjoyed it. And basically this follows a girl called Anna, who is one of the oldest fantasists at the kingdom, and she sort of knows more than the other 6 fantasists because, like I said, she is one of the oldest ones. She knows the rules, she knows the regulations. And then one day when she's working, she meets a park employee called Owen, and they sort of get chatting, but it's basically just her programming to speak. It's not like, you know, it's not like a person-to-person conversation, because obviously she's a cyborg. And then one day she starts, they kind of keep bumping into each other, and they keep talking and keep having these conversations, and then she starts to have these feelings that are confusing to her, and she realises that she's fallen in love. And then Owen is murdered. And this isn't a spoiler, Anna is sort of accused of his murder, sorry. And it's basically looking at Anna sort of questioning what it is to be a human. It's looking at how we perceive love. But then on the flip side, it's also looking at, you know, can we be engineered to feel nothing? You know, can people be made to just have these feelings? Because Anna, she, you know, she's noticed for a while that something's different with her, and she's noticed for a while that her, and I think there's two, from what I remember, I think there's two other fantasists. One of them just disappeared one day, and then another one, something happens to her in the story, and you kind of follow that story as well, as sort of, that's kind of like a secondary story that runs alongside this one. So you're getting a full range of things going on in this book. It's really gripping, and it is quite thought-provoking, and I really, really enjoyed this book. It is a really, really great book, and I would definitely recommend it to, you know, everybody. You know, it is one of those books that I think a lot of people would enjoy. And the best thing about this book is the style it's written. This book is written in sort of court transcripts and police interviews, and then Anna's memories of Owen Chen, and it follows that all the way through. So it's not your typical novel, because most of it is written in trial transcripts and police interviews, and so some of it's written, you know, like here you've got a trial transcript and it's written out like a play, so it's sort of scripted out. And then you've got things like sort of text messages, and it's sort of set out like that. And there's also pictures and, you know, CCTV camera images. And it's just a really interesting book. I believe that this is her debut novel, but I couldn't tell it was a debut novel. I really, really, really enjoyed this book, and I think it's a lot better than most debut novels that I've read. I would definitely recommend this. I really, really enjoyed it. And it's fairy tale, but with a twist, and that's some of my favourite sort of genre reading at the moment. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this, and I would definitely recommend it. The third book that I read was this one, and this is Tilly and the Lost Fairy Tales by Anna James. This is the second in the Pages and Co trilogy. I believe it's a trilogy, it might be a series, where the first one is this one. This is Tilly and the Book Wanderers. And in order for me to talk about this one, I need to sort of mention this one first. So, this is a book this is a middle grade book about a 11-year-old girl called Matilda Pages who lives with her grandparents above their bookshop because when she, sort of shortly after birth, her mum Bee disappeared and nobody knows what happened to her, or at least they're saying they don't know what happened to her. And all that Tilly, Matilda, she gets called Tilly in the book, all that Tilly has of her mother is this bee necklace that she wears around her neck because her mum is called Bee. So she lives in this bookshop and she helps out every day in this bookshop, and this is set in the October half term of school, and she's helping out her grandparents. And one day she overhears sort of people talking to her grandpa, and she goes to see who it is and she realises that it's Sherlock Holmes. And then another day she hears her grandma talking to Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice, and she's a bit sort of confused by it, obviously, but then Tilly starts getting visited by people from books, and she gets visited from Alice by Alice in Wonderland and Anne from Anne of Green Gables, and sort of the story sort of manifests in Tilly learning that she is a book wanderer, which basically means that she can jump into books and sort of be a part of those books. And with the help of her friends that she's made, she's got a best friend called Oscar in the real world, and then she's also got Alice in Wonderland and Anne from Anne of Green Gables, who are the ones that are in this book. With the help of them, she goes on this quest to try and find out what happened to her mum. She finds out that her mum's favourite book is A Little Princess, and she kind of uses that as a clue and tries to find out what happened to her mum. I read this last October. I kept it for the October half term so I could read it in the October half term, and I absolutely love this book. This is a cozy, you know, duvet hug in a book basically, and it is just lovely. And then as soon as the second one came out, I bought that one. So the second one is this one, and this is Tilly and the Lost Fairy Tales, and this one pretty much carries on straight from Tilly and the Book Wanderers, but this one is based in fairy tales. So the three fairy tales that are mentioned most are Little Red Riding Hood, Jack and the Beanstalk, and Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And this is set partly in Paris because Oscar, who's her best friend from the first book, his dad lives in Paris. So in the winter, sort of the Christmas holidays, Tilly and Oscar go and spend some time in Paris with his dad, his stepmom, and his grandma, I think, is there as well. And they basically get told something happens, and they basically get told for safety not to go book wandering because something happens at the end of the first book and the beginning of this book, which I can't talk to you about because it's a spoiler, but something happens and they're told not to go book wandering when they're away, but they decide, I'm going to anyway, it can't be that bad. And then things happen where sort of stories sort of characters start going missing, and there's plot holes, literal plot holes occurring in storybooks, and you know they're trying to figure out what's going on, and it's kind of up to these two as book wanderers to try and figure out what's going on with the world of books. And again, I didn't find this one as good as the first book, but I did really enjoy it. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and I did really enjoy it. It was a great book. It just, for me, wasn't as good as the first book. But if you like books, and if you like fairy tales, and if you like books about books, then these are definitely recommended. I believe the third one is coming out in September of this year, so September 2020, and I will be buying that as soon as it comes out to follow on the story, because it is really good. The next book, which I finished not too long ago, is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Butchered that name, haven't I? Michaelides. That's what I'm going with. Sorry if I got it wrong. So this is a psychological thriller about a woman called Alicia. Yeah, Alicia, not Alice, that's my name. Alicia. And she is a famous artist living in London. And 6 years previous to this book, she was this famous artist living in London, sort of perfect life. She had a husband called Gabriel, who everybody thought they were totally in love. And one night the police get called, and she has shot him in the face 5 times. And after that, she just doesn't speak. You know, no words come out of her mouth for 6 years. And she ends up in this sort of psychiatric forensic unit in North London, called The Grove. And she goes there, and she's been there for 6 years, and she hasn't spoken one word. And people, all the doctors and all the nurses and even staff, have tried to speak to her, and sort of patients have tried to speak to her, and she's being very violent towards patients. She hasn't spoke to them, but if patients have said something that she hasn't liked or hasn't agreed with, she's sort of got violent and turned angry and violent towards them. So sort of that is sort of the first bit of the book. Then there is someone called Theo, I wanted to say. Theo, yes. I had to check my notes there. Theo, and he is a criminal psychotherapist or psychologist, something like that. And he has always sort of been fascinated by Alicia, and he's also always wanted to sort of get Alicia to speak. So this job comes up at the Grove, and he applies for it, and he ultimately ends up getting this job. And he goes and starts working there, and he asks sort of the head doctor of the Grove if it would be possible for him to try and have this initial appointment with Alicia to try and get her to talk. And he sort of makes it his mission to get her talking, to figure out why she ended up killing her husband 6 years ago, why she shot him, and just try and get the answers that everybody's wanted. And she doesn't talk, but what he does is he kind of takes it upon himself to visit her friends and her family and business associates and things like that. And they kind of give her sort of this sort of air of sort of mystical sort of wonderfulness, but there's also this sort of, she's not as good as she makes out that she is, and so there's this sort of whole mystery surrounding her, and nobody knows. And Theo sort of takes it upon himself to try and get down to the root of sort of who is she? Was she a good person? Was she a bad person? And like I said, he goes and visits all these people, family, friends, business associates, and sort of against his better judgment, people are telling him stuff, and he's kind of making up his own mind about this woman, and he's kind of using it to try and get her to talk. And sometimes she kind of sort of, she'll smirk, or she'll, you know, sort of look at him in a certain way, and he thinks that, oh, I'm getting through to her, so he keeps trying. And then it kind of all sort of unravels from there. I can't really say much more than that, because obviously I will give the twist away. And yes, there is a twist, as there always is. But it was a really, really brilliant read. It was a great read. I absolutely loved this book. It was compelling. It was gripping. It was at one point I was getting really annoyed, because I was just like, will you just talk? Like, why are you being quiet? Why are you not speaking? And at one point it really, really rattled me, and I was like, Alice, it's just a story, calm down. But for it to have that impact on me, the author has written it really, really well, because you do kind of get sort of emotionally involved in the characters, and you are kind of like, just tell them what happened, and then you can be set free. You don't have to be in this place anymore. You don't have to be in this hospital. You know, just let them know what happened and what you've done. And you kind of get this, you do really get emotionally involved in the story. And it was great. I read this, I think it took me 2 days to read this, like sort of 2 sittings, and it was unputdownable, if that's even a word. It was so gripping, and I would definitely recommend it. It was absolutely brilliant. The book, this is the last book that I'm talking about today, this is the last book that I've literally just finished about 2 days ago, and I was currently reading this last week during my currently reading video that I did, and this is Dead Gone by Luca Festi. This is a psychological thriller / police procedural book set in Liverpool about this serial killer who is murdering victims as part of these sort of unethical, infamous, deadly psychological experiments. And he has killed 3 people, I think, already. It's set out really well. It starts with, the very first page starts with experiment 2. So you never actually hear about experiment 1. So that's sort of like, okay. So that kind of threw me a bit when I started reading it, because I was kind of like, well, what, you know, shouldn't it start from experiment 1? But as the story follows on, you do realise why it started with experiment 2. So yeah, this is basically about 2 detectives called David Murphy and Laura Rossi, and they are following this serial killer who is doing these psychological experiments on people, and it is messed up, guys. It is, whoa, it is intense, this book. This is gory, it's gruesome, it is mind messing, it is like, whoa. It was gripping though. I read this, as I left it for a few days where I didn't read it, but then I got back into it last weekend and I just couldn't stop. I really just could not stop reading it from I think I was about just under halfway through last time I opened it, and then I just straight away was in it again. So this book, it follows, you're kind of getting a few perspectives of people. So you're getting the detectives, you're getting the detective's sort of version of events, and then intermittently, you are getting little bits from the serial killer. So as the story is unraveling, the serial killer is sort of adding bits into the story that's kind of making you think, right, okay. And that's kind of like, they're like the little jigsaw pieces that you need to build the whole picture. But then in between this story and the serial killer's little intermittent bits, you're also getting the story following a guy called Rob, who is basically the boyfriend of a woman called Gemma, who went missing 11 months ago. And it's kind of that story intertwining with this story. It's really, really clever how it's being put together. And when I started reading this book, it took me to a place that I didn't think it was going to take me, but I really enjoyed where it did take me. And I'm really, really glad that I've read it, so much so as soon as I finished reading it, I ordered the second book in the series because I just couldn't wait. I just wanted it straight away. So this is the one that I've just finished, and I would definitely recommend it. I've had a really good run of books these past few months, and I am really, really happy about it. But yeah, this is the one that I've just finished, and it was really, really good. It was intense, it was thrilling, it was gripping. Books for me, when it comes to thrillers, I really like a messed up book. And that sounds really weird, but I love a book that is psychologically messed up, because I think that's just the best thing. But on the flip side, I also love books that are focused less on the serial killer and more on how the police sort of work the investigation, and this does both, and I think that's why I really enjoyed it so much, because Luke Festi, the author, he uses his knowledge of Liverpool to kind of build up this story about the serial killer. But then when the serial killer's not talking and it's sort of the police talking, it's all about sort of how they're profiling the killer and how the investigation is going and how they are finding suspects. And I really like that. I really enjoy sort of that aspect of a book. Police procedurals are one of my favourite sort of genre of books, but this was really, really good because it had that aspect, but it also had the really messed up sort of psychotic serial killer, which I really enjoy as well. So yeah, I gave this 4.5 stars, I think. It was really, really good. So yeah. Right, so that's it, guys. That is my wrap up from January to April. I've had a really, really good reading few months, and I hope that it lasts. I hope everybody is having a really good time, staying safe, staying well, staying healthy, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.